After answering how we add with negative numbers in the previous video, now we can ask, how do you subtract with negative numbers? Well, the short answer is we never subtract. Actually, the only thing we will ever do is we will add the opposite. Well, let's take a look at what that means to add the opposite. We've got this symbol here that we typically think about as meaning negative. That might mean -5. But I want to think about that symbol actually as meaning the opposite. So really, this means the opposite of 5. So what we're really doing is we are going to add a -5. So I'm going to change that to add the opposite. Change it to plus a -5. Similarly, if I had the opposite of -2, well, the opposite of a -2 would be a +2. So if I add the opposite, the negative becomes a plus, and we end up with plus +2. And this is how we're going to change every subtraction problem into an addition problem. We're never going to subtract again. It will only be addition. So for example, if I've got -3 minus 5, I'm going to change that -5 in the middle to add the opposite. So now I have -3 plus a -5. And we know if I've got two negatives, we keep the negatives and add the numbers. 3 and 5 makes 8, so we end up with -8. Let's try 5 minus a -3. Well, again, when I see that subtraction in the middle, I'm going to change it to plus and take the opposite of the next number, making it a +3. So now the problem reads 5 plus +3, which we know is +8. What if I've got -4 minus a -1? Well, again, seeing the subtraction, we change it to add, and we add the opposite of -1, which is a +1. So -4 plus 1. I've got a positive and a negative, which means we're going to end up with 0 pairs. There are more negatives, though, so my answer is negative. And when I subtract out the 0 pairs, 4 minus 1 gives us 3. How about we try -5 minus -8? Well, here again, we're going to change that subtraction to positive, and the opposite of -8 is +8. Add the opposite. Now, this time with a negative and a positive, the +8 is bigger. So there's going to be positives left over when we subtract out the 0 pairs. 8 minus 5 is 3, so we end up with a +3. Let's do one last example to wrap up this video. Let's do -7 minus 9. Well, again, we're going to add the opposite. So we change that to a plus. And that 9 becomes negative. Add the opposite. 2 changes, always in the middle. And we've got 2 negatives. So the answer is negative, because we're going to end up with a lot of negatives. We end up with 16 of them when we add the numbers together. So how do we subtract with negatives? We don't. We're always going to add the opposite.